Okay.
All right, no, yeah, let's kick this off. Our first diversity, equity, inclusion meeting for the Rotary Club of Alameda. It's our first meeting, so I want to thank you guys for being a part of it. I want to send this over to Jeff right now because Jeff was the one that approached me with the idea, and I thought he mentioned I thought it was a great idea and jumped at it. Probably, they say you want to look before you leap, and I definitely didn't do that. As soon as Jeff mentioned the name, I wanted to hop in and be involved, but want Jeff to kind of give an interview or overview of kind of what his thoughts are for this committee and see, his direction for it. And I'll kind of expound upon that, and then we can kick off the membership or to you guys, to the rest of the group.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much. So first of all, thanks for everybody that is here and wanting to be part of this. I had been asked a couple of times to be the president of the club over the 9 years that I have been in Rotary. And usually there was always some other commitment. I'm self-employed and just didn't have the time to make the commitment that I needed to. And 18 months ago, I counted them out. About 18 months ago, I actually said yes to being the president of the club. And the reasons that I wanted to be the president was, number one, to be part of a team that would be reducing the barriers that our club had to being more inclusive in the community. And those barriers generally were the fact that we met on Tuesday at lunchtime, which made it difficult for people that were working to actually attend a physical meeting at that time. And our dues were $1,200. And that was a lot of money for people that may have the Rotary spirit and want to contribute to the community, but just not have those assets to be able to do that. Secondly, was to inform the community of the great work that our club did. We did a lot of great things, but it was hard to get it out to the community. We have an internal system with Club Runner, and so it was easy to let everybody know within our club what we were doing. And I think most important was I wanted us to be able to recognize the systemic and structural marginalization that has happened in our community and the world, and hopefully to do more than simply adopt and vote a statement against racism or however the language that we would be using to do that. So somebody got a background? Thanks. Okay. So anyway, my vision for this, and really it's more of a collaboration than a vision, but when I thought of the ideas and talked a little bit to Will about it, it was number one, to review all the policies and the procedures that we had in Rotary, with an idea looking at how those might be barriers to other people joining, to educate both our members and the community on the concepts that I generally group around social justice, but to do that in a way that is that's positive, affirmative, and inclusive of all of our members, which sometimes can be challenging. Affirmatively outreach to people in the community, especially marginalized groups, with an invitation to join in on what we do as a club. And finally, to make sure that we are creating a welcoming and supportive environment for the new people that we bring into the club. So that's the vision that I personally had. But obviously we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 other people that I want to make sure that all of those voices are heard and that we move together in a single unified fashion. And I just want to do a quick shout out. I will do an informal introduction, but I see Jen. She is down in the bottom. And the reason why Jen is here is that I attended one of her lunchtime little seminar things and found her to be very enlightening. And so that's why I invited her to be part of this as well. Will thought it was a great idea. I just want to say hello, Jen, and thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yeah.
Back to
Thank
you, Will.
To piggyback off of what Jeff said was, when I joined Rotary, and I would tell people about it and say, hey, I've joined Rotary, and I would jokingly say, hey, yeah, I'm in Rotary, and it's probably the whitest thing I've ever done, and people would laugh at it, but never once did someone say, "Oh, nah." They all kind of agreed, and when you hear something like that, you're kind of like, they must be agreeing for a reason. And so there's this, perception that this is kind of not a monolithic group, but very, there's a Rotary type. And once you attend our meetings, you join, you see what Rotary is about, you see that that's not us. We are who we are, and we're this big group of diverse people with different backgrounds, and we're all moving and pushing in different directions, but we ultimately have this one goal, and we're in a a service driven or service based global organization. And when Jeff asked me about this committee, one thing I thought was immediately was the diversity and inclusion, and that's what I want to change, and see how we could change maybe the perception, of the group's makeup, not in what we do, but the makeup of our group, and see how we can make it more attractive and more approachable to people that want to be a part of an organization that truly does great things, and that when you say the name Rotary, it's a group that holds some weight to it. And so that's where I'm coming from, and I would be curious to see, if we can just go quickly amongst the group to kind of see what attracted you guys to this group, and see what you're kind of looking to get, and then that'll help us to kind of figure out which way we're going to go, and then that'll also tie into our speaker Jen. So if I can just get Carolyn to if you want to kick off.
Okay. When I joined Rotary, I was particularly interested in the international service aspect of Rotary, because I'd done a lot of traveling, and in that sense, interested in the global variety of people who are in Rotary, not just in our community, but in the world. The fact that the organization has people of every ethnicity, of nationality, different ages. And so I think if our club can have that same variety, we would be more effective. I think it's important to do an inventory of what our club currently is. There have been some new members that have come in since we've gone to Zoom, and I don't even know who those people are. Who are we right now before we start talking about who we want to be? That's my take on it.
Thank you. Karen?
You're mute.
You're muted. Karen, you're muted. Karen, can you get you to unmute yourself?
There we go. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah.
Attention.
Okay, so this is an area that I've worked in for a long time in the various jobs that I've had, but bringing it home to Rotary, I've always felt that we, sort of like Will was saying, that people have this image of all Rotaries, at least in this area, as being mainly, it was mainly white older men, now white and men and women, but I know that most people have no idea that our club is as diverse as it is, but can be even more diverse. So I want to help to improve that.
Perfect. Thank you. Susan or Gigi, Gigi. I don't
call me either thing. It doesn't matter.
Gigi. I love it. Gigi is my favorite. Gigi.
Okay. This is also an area that I've worked in, and I worked in concert with people of various ethnicities and religions around this area. And one of the things that I found in my work is trying to find the commonalities. So we might want to do an inventory of our membership to find out who we are. We could create, questions or whatever, because as an example, different ethnicities, different religions have different traditions for a lot of things that we do. So how does everybody celebrate a baby being born? What's that about? What's that look like? And if you look at the differences in that, it's a way to find commonality and develop connection, and perhaps to get more and more diversity in, because we're welcoming hearing about each other. Okay.
Tracy, how you doing? You're muted.
There we go. I'm in my car on my way home.
I know.
So I wanted to join because since I have joined the club till now, now the club has more diversity. It definitely didn't when I joined, and that wasn't even that long ago. So it's changing a lot, and I think that it's the kind of ripe time to, what brings me to it is more like educating the club, building awareness, building understanding, for the same reasons that we do for the four-way test. Is it fair to everyone concerned? And will it build goodwill, and that we embody it? But do we, in the same way that the culture has the problem too? So I don't think it's so unique to just Rotary, but I think that we have a great opportunity to be change makers in the club and help people have a more full understanding of letting everybody be who they are and celebrating who they are and enjoying who everybody is. And that's what brings me to it. So.
Thank you. All right, Min.
Okay. I've been running around the house trying to find that there's somebody doing the landscape next door, and I can't get away from that noise.
Yeah, I just had to talk my guy into coming tomorrow.
So I think piggyback on what Tracy just said, I joined about 15 years ago, and the landscape, the time that I joined, the landscape then was not completely, but really different from it is now. And it certainly had, like Will said, that have that stereotypical feel. And I did 15 years ago had some uncomfortable conversation. But I took at this just because I'm different. I'm in the minority. So I need to work a little bit more to reach out and to grab that understanding. And that was 14, 15 years ago. Things had changed, like Tracy said, had changed, and many other mentioned had changed quite a bit. But for the outside world, like when Will kind of had your opening statement, it wasn't far from the truth when I talked to people outside of our club and even in our town. There are certain perceptions about, So that my I thought I'm joining the committee because it seemed like it's the right thing to do, but also bring in certain kind of different angle at the beginning, not now, but what we can go from now. And I I think taking a hold of our diversity right now, the inventory, like Carolyn was saying, it's a good. I think that's a good start, and then we can go from there and see what we.
Yeah. Good.
What we trying to list.
Yeah. So no, I'm glad. I appreciate all the feedback, and it looks like we're all pretty much on the same page where we want to head this. And this is a unique opportunity here. I mean, our club is, we're celebrating what year? Our 101st year, and we're embarking on something new. And I think this is exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we go, and how this takes shape over the next year or two. And this is where, because we're new, we wanted to tie in somebody who has an extensive amount of experience in working with people, and I'm not sure quite how to say it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kick it to you, Jen, and let you kind of introduce yourselves and let us know, and drop some nuggets and help us, to give us some food for thought and give us some direction how we want to take this. And
Awesome.
to my knowledge, this is going to be pretty interactive, so we're not going to have somebody just lecture us. So I'm looking forward to this. So Jen, take it away, feel your way to introduce yourself. Do what you got to do.
Before I introduce myself, can you do me a favor? Can you go, I think it's on the share screen button, and give me, so that I can share my screen too?
I think you should be able
Oh, I
to.
can. You're right. I already can. Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Thanks. Sorry about that. Okay. So, hi, I'm Jen. I'm not going to share my screen yet, but I will in a minute. Oh, now you can see my screen. Okay, hang on. There we go. So I'm Jen. I live in Alameda, so I'm a local person. And Jeff and I, like he said, connected. I did a lunch and learn session around just to build some awareness around the ways that white conditioning shapes us as humans that live and have lived in the United States. My background, many years ago, was a teacher, mostly in Oakland. And over the years, progressed through, I was a school leader and a district leader and a superintendent of schools. And throughout that time, was mostly in Oakland, where as a white woman in schools serving entirely kids and families of color, race has been something that has been very apparent to me. I'm often the only white person in the room. My husband also is an Asian American man. His family immigrated from Vietnam many years ago. And so racial justice is a huge, important core value in my life and my work. And when Jeff reached out after the lunch and learn, I was really excited to hear about Rotary in general. I don't know a lot about the Rotary or Alameda Rotary, and excited to hear that. And I guess I would say to Will's point earlier, the idea that like Rotary in general is like a white thing, I guess, I think that makes sense, right? Like historically, there are many systems and structures in our society that used to just be white men. That was the group that was allowed to be there. And over time that has shifted. And so I'm excited to hear that you all are really looking for kind of proactive ways to help meet the vision of Jeff shared like an anti-racist with me. So I'm going to share my screen so I can kind of show you what we could do today. Loading. All right. Do you all see slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. First off, talking about race or racial justice or equity or inclusion brings up a lot of emotions and a lot of history for people. And so it's really important to start with some community agreements. And so I was asking Will if, whether you all had them yet, and I understand you're like a new committee. So I'm going to sort of put forward these as agreements for us to hold today. I meant to change one actually, because I'd like us to have some, and then you guys can kind of go from here. and decide in a future session, like, do these make sense for you, or, you know, kind of what feels comfortable. But I really want to make a container for us to have a really meaty conversation about kind of where you want to take this work. So the first one is be fully present, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. The second one, I actually, as I was listening to, I meant to change, uphold confidentiality, except that we're recording this and sharing the recording. So uphold confidentiality doesn't exactly work in that environment. So sorry, I forgot to delete it as you guys were speaking earlier. Speak your truth actually has two parts. Speaking our truth is about both being honest and speaking our truth, but also really remembering to speak from our perspective and not necessarily on behalf of people who look like us. So for example, as a white woman, I have beliefs and experiences that are true for me as a white woman. And I'm going to speak to those as my own experience, but I'm not going to conflate or assume or speak to all women or all white women, because there's a lot of variety there. And so that speak your truth is kind of just being mindful to balance both, yes, speaking your honest truth in this space, and also recognizing that in doing that, you're speaking for your own experience. Any questions or thoughts on that one? Okay. The next one is seeking to understand. So using questions and clarifying questions to kind of engage with each other around, you know, places that may not have shared understanding yet. And the last one is really be open to non-closure and discomfort. In my practice, I do lots of work in the body, and I'll actually bring a little bit of it to our session today, but non-closure and discomfort don't always feel great. And this is not the kind of work that like ties up neat with a bow. You know, we're gonna raise up some things and deepen relationships and ask questions and continue the work together. And sometimes it might feel some kind of way in your body. And there's actually research even that talks about the ways that our history of racial violence in our country is passed down genetically for white folks and for folks of color here differently, but has genetic ties. So the idea of feeling discomfort makes a lot of sense when we talk about inclusion and racial equality. So just kind of want to put those out there. Does anyone, I'm going to change so I can see all of you at the same time. There we go. Are there any questions or any additions or changes folks would like to make to the agreements besides removing uphold confidentiality?
No, I'm fine with what you have. No,
They're
I think
good.
this is good.
Good, great. Yeah, great. All right, thumbs up from everybody. So I just want to make sure I've got everybody. Yes, yes. We're good. Yep. All right. Great. Great. All right. So where this came from is as Jeff and I have been talking, and also Will and I have been talking, there's a statement around inclusion and diversity and equity that's come from the national Rotary level and also from Alameda's Rotary. And I think I appreciate, sorry, I can't see your name, but you're the person on the bottom right there. Okay, I can't move it. Sorry, one of you referenced the four ways as one of the things that you all use to make decisions.
Carolyn.
As another lens. So all of this has been happening in the organization that you're in the moment in Alameda, but also globally in Rotary, and obviously a lot in the world right now. And so what we're looking at, I wanted to just put out some key kind of terms so that we're all on the same page. Inclusion, oops, there we go. So when we talk about promoting inclusion, inclusion is the practice or sometimes a policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized. So an important part of inclusion is also it's a little hard to capture, but it's the feeling of the place, right? And so when we think about for Rotary, I've never been to a Rotary meeting, so I don't know how it feels, but are there ways or are there optics, right? If you are a predominantly male organization, how does it feel to be a woman in the space? If you're predominantly white, how does it feel to be a person of color? If you are mixed race, but there are very few or only one of a certain race, how does it feel to be that human, right? So an inclusive environment is grounded in inclusive policies, but also is about just kind of the feeling of the place. so that people can show up as their full selves. Also, I fight racism. I kind of changed into like anti-racism, which is the reason I changed it, just to be clear, is because I think there's a really big movement right now to differentiate between taking action and letting status quo continue. And so taking action toward anti-racism is kind of what the call to fight racism is bringing forward. And so I think it's exciting. Like, one of your anti-racist actions you've already taken is to form a committee to have some conversations and think about ways that you as an organization want to move forward, right? Instead of just saying we're being some kind of way and letting it just happen or not, you're taking action. So any questions or additions again to the kind of general definitions that we'll use as we engage today? Yeah.
So on the inclusion piece, I want to, if it's incorporated into it, the actual affirmative conduct of being welcoming to someone when they come in, and in a non-racist environment, it's when you go to the chamber mixer, and that probably is generally a group of all white people, men and women, but in business with a common ground. But sometimes it's hard to socialize in that, or it's like the speed dating kinds of thing that goes on. And so when that person comes into that group, it's, I used to have the series of 5 mixer questions. And it's the 5 questions you could ask anybody at any time to start a conversation until you could find some common ground someplace else. So in that inclusive piece, I kind of always include that as well, to be the social aspect. But I think that goes to your point of the feel.
So I've added welcoming and socializing in ways that allow everyone to bring their full selves, intentionally engaging across race. Does that feel comfortable?
It definitely captures it for me. I don't know how anybody else feels, but yes.
This is Karen. You put intentionally engaging across race, but for me, it's not just across race, it's just across differences.
Love that. Love that. Yes.
Because I think that this committee is not just focused on race, we're focused on all the different differences and identities that we bring to the organization.
Beautiful. Yes, I appreciate that.
I'll second that thought. Thank you.
Love that. Thank you for saying that. Great. Let me just put that back up so you can all see it. Thank you for saying that. Yes, thank you. I apologize. My work right now is very focused on race, and it's just the timing of it. So that's kind of what's present for me. But yes, I hear you. And I agree. You're intentionally engaging across difference. And also, I guess for the purposes of clarity, bringing your full selves is kind of a phrase that has become popularized lately, and really means that for folks who, it means like not feeling like or needing to conform to a white male paradigm, right? So there's different ways that different kinds of people communicate, or like I heard you say earlier, celebrate or welcome or connect or all the things. And so really bringing an openness to the different ways that could look across race and gender and, like you're saying, religious orientations. So you really have experienced the full breadth of diversity and all the greatness that it brings. All right, oops, I went ahead of the page, there we go. Any other either changes or questions or additions?
I had, it would be interesting to survey the club anonymously and ask about the questions you posed with inclusion, like get a litmus that we could report back to the club saying, you know, this question's just for the people of color. This question's just for the queer people. This is just for the, you know, what is your experience coming into the club? And it not, and just to actually solicit that response to see what is it like, you know?
Right. For me, right, as a white woman, like I wouldn't know how it is to be a whatever fill in the blank identities that are not the identities that I hold.
Yeah, and I don't typically, I don't talk about the things that I feel uncomfortable talking about.
Right. Right.
You know, it's like, I don't feel like it's okay to talk about it. So I definitely don't want to bring it up. But if I was asked, like, what was my experience and where do these things show up, I would definitely do it if it was anonymous. I mean, in this group, I would do it anyways, but there's definitely topics that I'm uncomfortable bringing up or letting be known. And I'm sure that's true for other people.
Of course. Right. Right. Love that. All right. So I'm going to have you do a little bit of two things. So I wanted to start with those two kind of key definitions, because that's really what's anchoring, or my understanding of what's anchoring this work for you all. And I want you to think on kind of three levels. What does promoting inclusivity and fighting racism look like and mean for you as a member of Rotary, for Alameda Rotary in general, and then in theory, eventually Alameda at large, because I know that's kind of your influence and purview, right? So I love the idea of a survey, and even just capturing different ways besides a survey. Like, what would it look like for Alameda Rotary to take action toward more inclusivity and to fight racism? What are some just kind of idea generating things? So if you could just, I was thinking just do some writing first to kind of get your ideas percolating. And then we can popcorn out, and I'll capture some notes as you guys share out. I'm gonna stop share so I can get on to my thing. Take one more minute. So I just shared in the chat. So if you click the little on the bottom, if you hover on the bottom of your pictures, a little thing, a bar will pop up that says chat, and it'll open you a column. If you want, click on that. It's just a Google Doc. And that's where I'm going to take some notes. Also, I wanted to just paste those on there. There we go. So sometimes I do this as like more like, imagine this as a place where you could put Post-it notes, like if you had just put Post-it notes. So if you want to, we can either just kind of share out verbally and I'll take some notes. The other way to do it would be if someone just wants to type on here themselves, that's okay too. Let me just make this a bit smaller. So I did hear one, survey the membership, right? and kind of capture what, you know, what are the experiences of different members. What other thoughts came up as y'all were journaling? And we don't have to write them down right as you go. You can kind of put them out if we want to talk about things a little bit.
I looked up, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, because I'm not seeing you. My computer's doing something weird. I looked up the ethnic identities of the people who live in Alameda, the percentages. And the information I got is that it's 51% white, 23% Asian, 6.4% African American, 0.6% Native American, 0.5% Pacific Islander, 3.3% some other race, and 7.1 of 2 or more mixed races. And I think that's just one category we're going to, which is that ethnic background. I think other things are the immigrant experience versus the not immigrant experience. For me, I often have dealt in the religious experiences. And so those are things I think we need to be aware of so we know who's in our environment.
Do you have a way to, I think I heard you say, Susan, that or Gigi, that you did that for all of Alameda. Does Alameda Rotary track membership so that you could also know the racial makeup of your current membership?
I
Not to
doubt
my
it.
knowledge.
Okay.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. So in theory, you could, if you wanted to, create a survey for folks to self-identify.
Yes. Once we learn the technology to be able to do that.
I can do that with you.
I think we could do it quite simply. Looking at our membership list, we can pretty much know what ethnicity.
Yeah, that's something that we could probably audit. Yeah.
But I'm going to tell, but also for me, I'm a Jew, and that makes a difference for me.
Yeah.
So I may be white, but I'm
Right.
also a Jew. And
Yeah.
and I think that's another place where I have experienced, I don't know what the right thing would be to say, but yes, I have experienced ignorance from other people, I'll say. And the other thing I'll tell all of you, you don't all know this about me. Most of you know that I'm exceptionally liberal. I wear a Biden Harris mask when I go out. And if I see somebody wearing a MAGA hat, I go up and I talk to them. And I talk to them kindly and I say, we need to talk to each other. Tell me about you, I'll tell you about me. About 50% of the times the people will talk to me, but I'm just figuring that's an interesting thing and it's something I'm willing to go to the uncomfortable places.
No, I mean, that's one thing is, promoting, inclusiveness is, exposing yourself to vulnerability and making yourself uncomfortable. And, in terms of that, it's through either a tough conversation or, a new experience, a new partnership. And, that's one thing that I've seen from Jeff is, trying to expound upon our exclusiveness is reaching out and partnering with different organizations. And I get excited when I hear about, Rotary's meeting, even if it's just with Kiwanis or whomever, just another like-minded group, but it's just further expanding broadening our horizons, and it inevitably and eventually that's going to lead us to some type of new experience and establishing a new relationship or exposing people to something new that otherwise, we wouldn't have encountered.
This is Carolyn. Am I on?
We can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can hear you.
Okay. I think sometimes when we talk about reaching out, it's kind of generic. Membership in Rotary is very personal. We invite people on a personal level to join us. And I think that maybe starting with this committee, but encouraging other members to invite someone who is different, whatever difference that might be, to come to an event, come to a meeting, if we ever meet again and live, or even come to a Zoom meeting. And as Gigi says, approaching somebody who's different from you and on a personal level is different from saying, let's survey the community and know that we need more African Americans or Latins. I didn't see a Latin statistic in your report, Gigi.
They didn't have it. I just searched on the internet and they didn't have it broken out as Latinos, but that may be the other piece, and maybe we should. I'm willing to search that out.
Yeah, because I think that's one area we're lacking.
Yep.
I love that.
Anyway,
So
I think it has to be personal.
Yeah, I captured invitations and I said, make an explicit effort to invite folks who are not the same as you. I love that. It's like such an easy way for places to not become diversified. If our circle is people who are like us, whether that's philosophically or racially or religiously, it will continue to grow in that way unless we explicitly make an effort for it to not grow in that way. I love that. Yes, sir. Go for it, Jeff.
So when I talk about Rotary to other people, I talk about a Rotary spirit that I think people have, and that is a spirit of giving, a little bit of sacrifice maybe that you make either financially. We pay fines every week. And so that goes to scholarship, but there are people that say, gee, I had a grandchild and I want to give $25. Or some people that said something happened, they give $150. So sometimes we give in monetary ways, but then in other ways as well that more involve our own personal activity or philosophy. But one of the real pillars of Rotary is also fellowship, and expanding on that concept of fellowship, that not just the members of your club. And I think generally we have the tendency to group with people that are like us because it's easy to socialize. And you said it can be a little more work to outreach to people that are not. I do it with food. I mean, I love food. I love international food. And so it seems to be one of the things that I can easily gravitate to with anybody and almost any culture.
Yeah.
And once again, that kind of just starts the ball rolling, but then it gives you the opportunity to delve deeper into that person and who they really are.
Even just capturing after COVID, maybe there's like a potluck or a food-based way to bring in members that are not the same as you or something like that.
Yeah, there was an event that I wanted to put together, and it's logistically, especially if you open it to the public, it's logistically almost impossible to do. But it was, people would bring a dish from however they identified, whether it was a country or an ethnicity or whatever it was, something that was passed down from their great grandmother. I don't care. And there would be a short time to be able to share that with the remainder of the group. Yeah, it's not real practical, but on a more private level, it is.
And that
Maybe
could
someday.
grow. Go ahead.
I just said maybe someday.
Yeah, like a potluck or something that explicitly recognizes difference. And I think the other thing I'm appreciating is that folks are recognizing the ways that identity is important. You know, identity matters, our identity matters. And so how can that be infused with the food idea, whether, like you said, grandma's recipe or other ideas?
Another area, Gigi, because you brought it up to me back in a conversation about, and I think you mentioned it earlier, about our customs on like weddings and how weddings are changes, our various celebrations. I mean, everybody has a child, everybody gets married, but that's part of very much of individual cultures as well, and seems like safe territory as well.
Well, one of the things I've done in these kind of workshops for people is commonalities, and so I use life rituals for it, because we may do different things when we have a baby, but they're sort of, when they boil down to trying to have good luck and good happiness for your baby. When you bury people, everybody does it differently. But again, usually it's the same values all involved. And so, and it's just understanding how it gets there. I've had people come to me who were not Jewish and say, why do you bury your people so quickly? And once I explained it, they got it, you know, and it's about understanding and feeling okay to ask. I will tell you, having moved here from the East Coast, there was a minimal at best Asian population. And that's not true here.
Mm-hmm.
So I have never experienced the Asian population before. I would love to learn about the different cultural, ethnic, whatever the celebrations. I loved it when Min gave his thing about Tet and talked about the red envelopes, how he used to love it and now he hates it. Not Min, not you, I'm sorry. Who was it that did it? Fong did it. It was so funny, but I understood it, you know? So for me, that is something I would like to learn about. I'd love to learn about the Asian culture.
So sharing customs, celebrations, and life rituals is a way to build community. Yeah.
Right, and you can do an easy survey of that and then just put it all together and we'd see how we're all different but alike.
Mm-hmm.
There's a game I would play with kids called Have You Ever? And that was another way to find commonalities.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, have you ever climbed a mountain? Have you ever been to a foreign country? You can put in any questions you want. And it's an interesting thing that you find out.
This is Karen. I want to go back to what Tracy's suggestion, and that is, I think all of these ideas are really good. At the same time, I think I agree that we first need to do an assessment and with the club and understand where people are coming from, what their experience has been, and so forth. And if we were able to meet in person, sort of like Gigi, I've been a diversity trainer and you know, I would want to do like a cross the line kind of exercise where, you know, if you identify as this or you have had this experience, the same kind of thing. But since we can't do that, I want to go back to doing something where we can actually survey our members to understand what they're feeling and what their needs are and how they feel, whether it's inclusive or not inclusive and so forth.
To dovetail on that, I like that idea. I feel like we're missing a foundational safety step. Like for me to feel safe in a space to be open about how I'm identifying or what group I'm in, or even just to make those selections, I feel like we need a baseline, just like we did at the beginning of this meeting, where you put up, here's what we're agreeing to, is that I feel like we need to have the club as a whole have a baseline understanding of here's what we're going to be talking about ongoing from now on. It's not just this year, this is, you know, forever. And that, how do we create a safe space for everybody? How do we create a space where everybody can feel like they can share who they are fully and be who they are fully? And so that's where the inclusion part, you know, I think surveying the club helps, because that helps us identify where people have felt that they weren't safe or understood. And one of the questions I thought was, what would you like members to better be informed about in relation to these topics, being like your identity and things where you felt like it missed. So I feel like there's this foundational thing that needs to come before and throughout everything that we do, so that we're always bringing it back to the most affected person. Like in my practice, in my acupuncture practice, you know, I'm always thinking, I want to craft my language and my site and the way that I work for the most traumatized person, because everybody else will be fine then, you know. So when I think about like, do I want to take this course or describe something this way, I want to describe it in a way that the most traumatized person isn't traumatized. I'm not causing any sort of issue with that. And so that makes it a lot easier for me to figure that out versus like what would be best for everybody. It's like, no, I want to go for the most difficult situation, because everybody else won't care. Like it'll be fine for everybody else. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm rambling.
No, it does. No, I know what you mean.
I heard two
Right
things.
now, I
heard-
don't think that we have that atmosphere going on. Well, I don't know because I haven't seen everybody in person for a long time. But, you know, online or if something's recorded, you know, I like this idea of getting to know each other's customs and cultures. But factoring in there also keep sending this message of what does a safe environment mean? You know, what does it mean to take up space? What does it mean to not take up space? A whole bunch of stuff. So, and I'm not sure how we accomplish that with the club and ourselves. You know,
Right.
I'm learning
and I think
it.
to add on to that, I think in the racial justice world, there's an interesting kind of addition to safe space around safe for who? Is it safe for me as a white woman to, I guess safety is tricky, right? Because safe for one person could mean harm for another. Safe could mean that someone else has to hide a piece of their identity because they don't feel safe, because I hold space in a certain way that requires that we. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Anyway, just safe space. Also, brave space is another way that sometimes kind of add on that it's not just assuming a right to comfort, but that it's actually a space where there's relationships such that folks could say brave things and stay in relationship with each other. The other thing I heard was that you, I think we're also saying possibly Alameda Rotary at large could create some community agreements of some sort.
Me? Was I saying that?
Yes, I thought you said something like, kind of like
I
we did
wasn't, but I
today.
like the idea.
Okay. Okay. We'll give it to you then. Great, great.
I mean, we're shooting for global change, right? So yeah.
This is Karen. I would take that even a little broader, and in that I don't know that the club really knows that we're putting an emphasis on this. We came out with a policy statement, I think when a lot of organizations did, because it was important to do, and we felt it was important. But beyond that, we haven't really had a discussion with the club about needing to do this work and why we're doing this work and what that statement means. So I think we need to, I'm sort of backing or piggybacking on what Tracy said, but I just feel like there needs to be a larger bubble or larger to hold all of this rather than just the committee. So we need to be thinking about that.
I think that's where it's important that we tie in, or we have that survey that that was brought up earlier, just to kind of get a feel for, or hopefully at least establish a baseline of, who feels what, and, you base it on, what the most vulnerable member is feeling. And we kind of, go from there. I think that's definitely a good place to start. Is one, we need to figure out, who's in our club, and two, how do they feel? And I think once we take note of those, or take note of, we figure out who, we figure those out. I mean, that would be, I would think, our simplest way forward in putting together, meaningful action for this group, for this club.
Can I summarize that? It's like you have a policy, you have a committee, there will be a survey, and coming from that, some kind of statement with some action steps that some of them I think are here, and some of them will come after you have some more information about people's lived experience.
I have a feeling that as we talk about, we must do this survey, surveys are tricky. And I would suggest that maybe we don't start to reinvent the wheel. You have Jen, you have Gigi, you have Karen who work in this field. Why not have them help each other, or maybe as a trio, create the kind of survey that we think we want? I wouldn't know what questions to ask. I have some feelings about it, but I think we need help in this so-called survey that we want to do.
I think we'll also be more successful with the survey if we make sure that we reach out to each Rotarian personally. And,
Right.
we divide up the membership and we call and say, by the way, you're getting this survey and this is why it's important. And we really hope you'll participate.
Good.
So
Love that.
adding that in should get more responses.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. And just to kind of clarify something, the statement that is on our website was adopted by the board, and I don't believe was ever published anywhere to individual members. So the board read it, the board understood it, but I think, I can't remember if I was having Tracy, was I have a conversation with you maybe about 6 months ago and said that, gee, the board just adopted a statement, and you as a member said, I don't remember even seeing that or hearing that at a meeting or getting an email that you did that. It was just, it appeared and it's on the website. And once again, oh, great, we put a sign in the window, or we put a statement up on our website without even letting our members know what we did. So as we work on some foundation, Tracy, that you're talking about, as Rotarians, we do have some guiding principles generally around the four-way test and some other broad statements that give us that foundation to be able to move forward and build. But I concur with everything that's being said. The other part, because this is very important to me, there is also some money behind this. So if there is a need to do something that is going to involve finances, there's line items in the budget. I can go back to the board. We can shift things around for priorities if it is necessary.
So I captured in that one, Jim, that you're raising up a need for communication with the larger Rotary, both soonish, like an initial thing, but also to other folks' point, this is ongoing work. So there'll be some kind of, whether it's like a paragraph on your newsletter or some way of continual communication loop with the larger community.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we now have at least a monthly newsletter that can go out, that we can start to put things there. We are now posting regularly on our Facebook page, and we understand how to use some aspects of the website so, that we didn't know before. So there are some tools in place that I think we can start to utilize now as well to get that word out.
Yeah.
Great. So any last ideas that didn't get surfaced yet that folks want to put out? And you all should have, if you all open this document, if you want to, in the chat, you can keep typing on it later if something comes to you.
Okay.
I have just a quick thing to add, because the first question was, what is promoting inclusivity? I feel like we were just talking about that, and fighting racism, which we didn't, I don't feel like, talk about as much.
Too much. Mm-hmm.
And I do think that that's something that, at least for me, I think it's important to be explicit about, not, especially once we broaden the group to be more than just about race, which I'm not opposed to that, but I think that when white people do that, then race gets lost. And that may be an inappropriate judgment, I don't know. But so like always having the, what does it mean to be anti-racist, and that starts with each individual. So it's not like we're, the things that I participated in, I really connected with the things that was like, yeah, you're part of the problem. Like, that the messaging is, I'm part of the problem. I am racist. I'm in a racist system. Of course I am. So how do I come to terms with that? How do I do my own self-work? We're not going to do that in the club, but how do we introduce that concept that every single person in the club is racist? It doesn't mean that you're burning a cross on somebody's lawn. And so that part, like, I have no idea. That feels like a landmine with some members of the club. So I don't know how to introduce that, but I also don't want to be sugarcoating stuff either.
It's that balance, right? I mean, yeah,
like we need to do the uncomfortable stuff.
Yeah.
And looking into that is uncomfortable, but important. And so are we here to make change or not? Like Rotary, you know, so even if people are uncomfortable looking at it, how do we start introducing those
Mhm,
topics
mhm,
and help people understand
mhm.
that framework?
I love that.
I
And
think
I
if,
even, as you were talking, sorry, just two quick ideas. One would be a newsletter, like in your newsletter, it could even just be like a vocabulary word of the month or a question of like, how does blank contribute to racism? How does urgency? How does, right? And then a little whatever. And then the other thought was you could fund it. Hey, here's a scholarship for this anti-racist training or for this, you know, and I don't know. Sorry. So go ahead, Gigi. You had an idea?
what I was going to say is, and we need to educate our members. So we could have someone like you come in, be a speaker and explain to everybody what's institutional racism,
And how do I play into that as an individual? Yes.
exactly. And I think it coming from someone from the outside is people like experts.
I know.
People like experts,
That's the
but I
thing.
think that would be a good way to start off as we're raising awareness, to explain what it is.
I totally support Jen. If you'd be willing to do a program sometime, we will, we'll work on the content.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I'm really on board with that.
But we need to have her do it before we have her become a member.
I love it.
We
I
need
love
an
that.
outside expert.
I love it. That's so great. You guys are awesome. So I just captured, how can we introduce the idea of like everyone taking responsibility for doing the personal work toward fighting racism? Is there a way to leverage the newspaper, a speaker series, fund or scholarships to anti-racist work?
Yes. Yes to all of it.
And actually, I feel like I have a lot of content, Jeff. I could probably pretty easily give you a short blurb for your newsletter every month easily. Just as like a box that's like what we could even figure out as a parallel structure. And, you know, like, here's what this means. Here's what it might look like. Here are 2 questions you could ask yourself before taking action to check yourself or something like that.
Yeah. So what does everybody think about, not so much for us individually here, but for the club? Is somebody going to say, why are we doing this? I hope nobody would be saying, why are we doing this? But that there were some kind of defined goals or objectives, or just something that we could kind of point to that maybe it's, I don't want to say a yardstick where we measure our success. I don't think that's necessary. I think this is different kind of work than measuring it that way, but also kind of conveying what, I'm kind of lost for words, but a direction, what we'd like to see accomplished, if it's just awareness. And what does everybody think about something along those lines?
Well, I think the statement that the board has made is exactly that. It needs to be broadcast, and I explain why.
Yeah, so I think I'll piggyback on that, is that it's pretty broad. Say, hi, we're against racism. And so I think that's a nice foundation. And then do we need to put some meat on those bones?
I think that we're losing out by not reciting the 4-way test at every meeting, because I think the 4-way test really says this is how we're supposed to look at things as Rotarians, and that could apply to the subject we're discussing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The 4-way test forced us to look in the mirror, and
So I think if somehow we use the 4-way test, that's our justification for doing this.
Yeah. And we all already believe in it, right? Or at least that when we became Rotarians, that was something that was a kind of a founding principle that we were going to try and live our lives by, or at least attempt to
do the very best we could to live that way, to be that way. Yes.
Yeah. Let's say aspire to be that way.
Okay.
And I
So
think
that's what I was trying to say earlier was, I think captures what people are saying, and that is, I think that we need to present the statement again, and then every week have Will, or every month, whenever is appropriate, have Will as the chairperson giving a report to the group so they know what we're working on and where we're heading and what we're trying to do. Because again, I think if you ask the average Rotary member, like Tracy was saying, and I was saying, I don't think anybody even knows that we have a policy statement or that this work is being done, other than when we made the first call for people to join the committee.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And at least now there is some mechanism in place for disseminating that information out that we didn't have before.
I do think that the idea that the committee has more specific goals than, I haven't seen the mission statement, and maybe it was, or the whatever the thing is. So, but if it's vaguely worded, I think it's important that we're not vague, because going along with anti-racist principles, it's time to be explicit, you know? So to not say we're just working towards that. No, we're trying to, what are we trying to do? I see it as that we're trying to help the club, educate and help the club on being actively anti-racist every day for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
Like, it's, you know, that's the commitment I'm looking for in the club that I'm involved in.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just for this year, it's not just for next year. This is the rest of our club's future.
It is the work of the Rotary.
Next 100 years is what it's the next 100 years.
I think as a long-term goal, a project will be good, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But that could address racism in some form also. But
But you know,
it's not just about giving money, it's also about doing things and making it work.
Yeah, there's other ways to build your community rather than, you know, like G just said, handing out money. There's other ways that we could enlighten our community. And if it's, you know, one just being, you know, as individuals being that light, but also as an organization, you know, reaching out to those groups that, you know, feel marginalized or, you know, discriminated against, and showing them that, hey, you know, we're with you. We're basically the same. We could all do this together. And I think that'll be huge.
So, you know, let me put an example out there because it's going to be coming up relatively soon.
Thank you,
And
Carolyn.
not the idea that we're going to be dealing with it today.
Hi,
but-
Carolyn.
Bye, Carolyn. Yeah. Is, you know, every year we give out somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000 in scholarships. And as I look back over all of the pictures of all of the people the youth that we have given scholarship money to, they tend to be white generally. But I think what strikes me more than anything else is that they're already going to Harvard, they're going to Yale because they received the money. And then, you know, our $500 or our $1,000 probably is a drop in the bucket for what already is being funded. But there are other students. In fact, I had a conversation this morning with Dr. Miller, who is the interim president of the College of Alameda, on developing a separate scholarship plan for those individuals that are struggling at the junior college level. And when we were talking about that, I was suggesting that, because I only heard the rumors though, that there are people in junior college right now, community college, that are living in their cars. And so, you know, a scholarship for tuition is one thing, but if you don't have a meal, if you don't have something else, and I asked him to see how it's like a life scholarship so that you would be able to continue to go to school. But for Rotary right now in the spring, we're going to be giving out $6,000, $8,000, $10,000. And is that something that the committee would like to at least take a look at, how that mechanism works, how we award it, with the thought for being anti-racist or building equity or any of those things as an initial project?
Isn't that another committee's purview?
Well, so everything comes under the purview of the board,
Okay.
right? So that's the first thing. And it seems like what has happened with Rotary in the past for the 9 years that I've been there is whoever the committee chair is, and sometimes the committee chair is the same year after year after year, that's the policy and that's the procedure. and a new person comes in and they kind of change the policy and the procedure a little bit. So I'm a huge policy and procedure guy. I've been involved with enough nonprofits. I've worked with the nonprofits where one year you're going in one direction and the next year you're doing 180 degrees in the other direction. And it hasn't been as significant as social justice, for instance, but in other things. So I think the idea for the board to be really active in setting the policy for scholarships, and then that goes down to the committee. Whatever it is.
I typed that on the document as well. Consider scholarship criteria with an anti-racist lens. Check whether this lives in another committee as well. Not sure.
Right. And Gigi, at the end of the day, it goes to the board. If the board says no, or the board says we're going to take a smaller step, or whatever it is, so they can say, you know, we're not ready for that, whatever it is. But I think this committee, the way I envisioned it, was to look at what Rotary was doing and to come back to the board and say, here's this policy, and here's how it might be improved for the objectives that the committee has wanted to extend.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we can address. We could make a scholarship that is for a kid who is going into plumbing school.
Exactly.
We could make a scholarship for a kid who's going, you know, whatever it is, we could define what they are, what we think they should look like. So that's another piece. But one of the things you said early on was talking about the club and it being more inclusive. I have to say our meeting time is not inclusive. I don't know if that's ever been addressed with this club to change a meeting time. And I don't know that that's something we want to address either, but for people who work, it's hard.
You're saying, and I'll add it to the list is why I'm asking, like consider, not this meeting, but there's another meeting that meets, okay, so consider adjusting meeting time, regular meeting.
Our regular meeting is a lunch meeting, and some people can't go to a lunch meeting. So, and there are other.
I think, and I agree with you, and I think the idea is that there can easily be a blending of the two. I definitely not opposed to having a Tuesday night meeting or whatever it was. It's obviously much easier now when we're on Zoom as well.
Right.
So I think that's, again, one of the recommendations might be, could we do something that is going to be in the evening when people are not managing their children's education, right? All the other
survey, actually, you could give choices on a survey of that same survey of like which meeting times work for you or something. Yep. So I actually have, speaking of meeting times, another meeting. What would you like to capture in terms of next steps, if anything? Is this document enough for now? Will, Jeff, I'm happy to connect afterwards if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my notes right now. I think we're good to go for now. And I'm gonna, we'll resend this document out to the committee members for us to, review and kind of put our thoughts together, get our next steps for our next meeting. But I mean, this was incredible. I was worried that this was gonna be like a 15-minute meeting, but I mean, you guys, have been incredible, and I think
100%.
This is we're definitely headed in the right direction. I think. We all have different ways of saying what we want, but I think we're all walking hand in hand. And I think that's going to be great for when we start taking action and putting this forward. So I'm definitely encouraged.
Good. So one of the things I would like to put at the top of the list is that we are able to start working with Jen or a subcommittee of us to work on that first program. I think, Jen, you had suggested around language. So introducing the concept of language to people so that when we're communicating and we say the word anti-racist, if that's the word it is that it's some place somewhere that people can understand what that was. And I really like that idea of setting kind of a baseline language and things to go along with it.
And I think it could connect to some folks raising the purpose. Sorry, Min, did you have something you want to add?
No, go ahead.
Not that I'm opposed to what Jeff just said, like putting the word anti-racism and whatnot, which I applaud. But people that is, if I may be blunt, are ignore about this racism as a problem to begin with.
Mhm.
The education of anti-racism means nothing to them.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure how to go about that, or
Mhm.
it's a thought. Not that I have anything against it. It's just that I don't know anyone in the club right now would have that sentiment, but it's always been kind of the curiosity on my own.
Mhm.
If we keep talking about it and we set it as a normal, as a standard, even if people aren't there yet, we may be inching them towards it to get there. You got to talk about the unspeakable, and you've got to talk about it with people in a way that is embracing them.
Exactly. Yes.
And I mean, one of my lines I often use with people is, I think we want to get to the same place, but we have different ways to get there. So let's explain it to each other. I mean, if you can find those commonality building lines, and if you think somebody's a real big racist in our club, let me know. I'll go talk to them. And I'll explore this stuff with them, because we have to learn from each other. And I'm not afraid of somebody who's an angry racist.
Yeah.
And maybe even capturing that learning orientation as a club. I'll put that in the notes too, because I think that does sort of raise an expectation around whether it's around this, anti-racism, or just generally, it's going to require us to continue learning always as the club evolves over time.
And I'll tell you a quick personal story, because I think it talks about asking questions. When I was 10 years old, my brother became engaged to a woman from Bermuda. And I asked her, I said, "What religion are you?" "We're Jewish." She was Episcopalian. She goes, "You're Jewish? I thought the Jews were dead in the Bible." Not that she didn't know about the Holocaust. She'd grown up in Bermuda. She didn't know any of it. And then she said to my parents, she goes, "Do you have horns?"
Oh no.
And we said no. We explained the way. There's a passage in the Old Testament that is why people think Jews have horns. But we said, no, we don't have horns, and this is why it is. And she became such a fighter of anti-Semitism. And she came from knowing nothing, but she had the guts to ask the questions and to speak about her ignorance. So.
Great.
All right.
All right, I'm going to head off because I have my next thing. Jeff and Will, I will email you just so you also have that link in email to all the notes and stuff. It was so great to connect with you all. Thanks so much for having me.
No problem. Thank you.
Update the work to this. It's great. It's really transformative. Take good care. Good to see you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right.
Okay.
Well,
so
I think it's a good start, guys.
Yeah, I think so. Will, do we want to, maybe you and I kind of just circle back to see what the notes are and maybe try and get a schedule or an agenda for how we might move forward then, and then get back to the committee on it?
Yep. Yeah, I would say once we get that from Jen, you and I, hopefully, if it's not tomorrow or the day after, we'll
yeah, because I'm ready. I said I've been waiting 18 months for this. Yeah, the wheels grind very slowly, but I kind of was talking to somebody. We have to sometimes move tiny steps on thin ice, but you need to keep moving. That's
Absolutely.
It. It's a good start. So
absolutely,
very happy about where we are.
Yeah. So Jeff, I'll reach out to you tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great.
And then we'll go from there, and then we'll get all the notes to everybody, and then. Like I said, guys, I really appreciate your time and efforts, and let's keep this thing moving. So thank you.
Just everybody, I want to introduce somebody who had some technical difficulties, but depending on what your screen setting is, over the right-hand side is Mary. Mary, wave.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mary Vivian. I truly apologize for being late. I'm just turned 60 and I'm highly challenged with technology, but you know what? I'm working on it. I started with the iMac and I moved to my phone. So I once again apologize, and I'm really happy and excited about being a visitor amongst everybody
Thank you.
in this Rotary Club. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we
Thank
are
you.
recording
Welcome.
this, so you'll be able to get the recording of what we discussed so far to make a contribution. So Mary's a potential
Okay, Jeff.
member. We were chatting, and so it was something that she was interested in as well. So welcome to the end of it, and we'll find a way to get you the entire meeting.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Fantastic. Okay, so I guess we're good then. Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
All right, see you guys.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
See ya.
Have a good evening.
And vote.
Exactly.
Bye.
All
Already did. Done.
Oh, good. Me too.
right, you take care.
Done. Peace.
Bye.